A young black boy, Jamal, stops to help a wealthy man stuck on a deserted road. Instead of gratitude, he faces open disrespect. But Jamal's calm, defiant response flips the tension. A single act in one powerful line hint that this small encounter will ripple far beyond this lonely highway. "Get your dirty hands off my car, boy." The wind howled down the empty highway, carrying dust across the hood of a sleek, midnight black Mercedes S-Class parked half on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking like a weak heartbeat. A single headlight flickered in the dusk. The sun had dipped behind the Arizona desert hills. Painting the sky burnt orange and bruised purple, Jamal stood still for a second. His skinny frame dwarfed by the luxury car and the towering man glaring down at him. Sweat dripped from Jamal's brow onto his cheap white t-shirt. In his right hand, he clutched an old tire iron that looked ancient next to the polished chrome rims. Inside the Mercedes, tinted windows hid two teenage kids, wide-eyed, pressing against the glass to watch their father. The man Howard Ellison, CEO of something too big to fit on a business card, had an arrogance that smelled like his cologne, expensive, overwhelming, and meant to choke the air. Howard's silk tie fluttered in the wind. He jabbed a finger at Jamal's chest. "I said back off. I don't need charity from your kind." Jamal swallowed, feeling the taste of dust in his throat. He could hear his mother's voice in his head. "Mind your words, Jamal. Let them choke on theirs." He knelt anyway, ignoring Howard's protests, and inspected the flat tire. A jagged nail glinted in the rubber. Howard scoffed, glancing back at his kids as if to say, "See this? This is why we don't stop in these parts." Jamal's hands moved with quiet confidence. He loosened the lug nuts like he'd done 100 times on his uncle's beat-up truck. He could feel Howard's eyes burning into his scalp, but he refused to look up. A single semi roared past, its headlight sweeping over the scene like a stage spotlight before vanishing into the dusk. Silence returned, heavy as the desert heat. Howard's voice dripped poison. "You people always hanging around, looking for a handout?" "I ought to." Jamal stood, cutting him off with a raised hand. Opened it trunk, opened it. Howard didn't protest this time and pulled out the spare. He felt the rich man's rage simmering like oil on fire. A sudden gust of wind sent a swirl of dirt over Howard's polished shoes. He cursed, wiping at the scuff on his Italian leather. Inside the car, the kids watched, their breath fogging up the window. Jamal's heartbeat thudded in his ears as he slid the spare into place. He could hear Howard's muttered insults, ungrateful, street rat, worthless, each word landing like a stone. But Jamal kept working. The last lug nut spun tight under his fingers. He stood up slowly, wiping his greasy hands on his jeans. His eyes met Howard's for the first time, calm, steady, unmoved. The same way he'd once stared down the school principal who said he'd never make it past 9th grade. The same way he'd stared at the empty fridge last winter and promised his mama he'd fix it all someday. Howard pulled out his wallet, thick, stuffed with bills, gold cards peeking out like teeth. He peeled off a 20, held it out between two fingers like it was dripping sewage. "Here, now get lost." Jamal looked at the bill, then at Howard. He could see the man's smirk, the way he tilted the money just out of reach, daring Jamal to snatch it, to prove him right. Behind the tinted glass, one of the kids pressed a small palm to the window. Jamal didn't move. Instead, he reached out, and in one smooth motion, he slapped the 20 from Howard's hand. The bill danced away on the wind, tumbling across the highway until it vanished into the sagebrush. Howard's mouth fell open. Jamal leaned in, close enough that Howard could smell the sweat and motor oil. "You think you're better than me?" Jamal said, voice soft as a prayer but sharp as a blade. "But tonight, you were stranded. I was the only man who stopped." Howard's jaw clenched, but no words came. Jamal stepped back, grabbed his rusty tire iron and shouldered his backpack. He looked through the window at the two kids staring. Back, eyes wide, reflections of something they didn't yet understand. A distant rumble of thunder rolled over the desert. Jamal turned, his sneakers crunching gravel, and started down the highway. The fading sun casting his shadow long and thin. Behind him, Howard just stood there, a man with a full wallet and an emptier pride watching a boy with nothing but dignity walk away. Jamal didn't look back. He knew this moment would follow him. He didn't know how. He didn't know when. But something bigger had just shifted in the desert air. The neighborhood always smelled like fried grease and old dreams. Jamal's sneakers crunched across cracked pavement as he walked the final block home, streetlights flickering overhead like tired eyes trying to stay awake. He kept replaying Howard's face in his mind, the insult, the 20, the look when Jamal slapped it away. The desert had been quiet, but Jamal's mind roared. The front door of his family's two-room apartment squeaked open before he even knocked. His mother, Rosa, stood there in a faded housecoat, hair tied up with an old scarf that smelled faintly of lavender and laundry soap. "Where you been, boy?" she asked, worry slipping through her voice, though she tried to hide it. "It's past sundown." "Flat tire," Jamal said, dropping his old backpack by the door. "Some rich fool stuck on the highway." Rosa arched an eyebrow. "Pay you?" Jamal laughed dryly. "Tried to. I told him to keep his money." Rosa shook her head but didn't scold him. She just placed her hand on his cheek, her palm warm, her eyes tired but proud. "Wash up. Food's cold, but you ain't." Inside, the kitchen table sagged under a chipped bowl of beans and stale bread. Jamal ate slowly, listening to the hum of the old refrigerator, the drip of the bathroom faucet, the soft thump of his mother folding laundry. He didn't tell her everything, not the slurs, not the way the man looked at him like a stray dog. Some insults were better left buried under the skin. When he crawled into bed, the desert night pressed against the window, full of secrets. Jamal stared at the cracked ceiling and wondered if Howard Ellison had already forgotten him. Morning came with the sound of distant sirens and a baby crying to apartments over. Jamal woke early, tied his shoes tight, and slipped out before Rosa could ask him to fix the squeaky door again. He walked to the old auto shop 3 blocks away. Old Mr. Carter always let him sweep floors and clean tools for a few bucks. But as he rounded the corner by the liquor store, Jamal stopped dead. A car sat parked at the curb, shiny and out of place among rusted pickups and potholes. A black Mercedes, spotless under the weak sun. Howard Ellison leaned against the hood in a crisp gray suit. Sunglasses perched on his sharp nose. Jamal felt heat crawl up his neck. He shoved his hands into his pockets, pretending not to see the car. He kept walking. Howard called out, voice too loud for this street boy. "Hey, boy." A few neighbors peeked through curtains. A man smoking on the steps muttered, "Who's this fool?" Jamal ignored them, but his pace slowed. He hated the eyes on him, the curious looks, the silent judgment. He stopped when Howard stepped in front of him. "Listen," Howard said, removing his glasses. His eyes were rid-rimmed, sleepless. "I want to make things right." Jamal's jaw tensed. "You've got your spare tire? Nothing left to fix?" Howard exhaled, frustration bubbling under his skin. He pulled out his wallet again, thick. Always thick. He fanned out a wad of hundreds. "I'm trying to help you. Take it." Jamal didn't even glance at the money. He looked over Howard's shoulder. Rosa was standing on the sidewalk now, arms folded tight across her chest. She wore the same faded housecoat, the same lavender scarf. But her eyes were hard as flint. She stepped forward. "You the man who made my boy walk home covered in dust last night?" Howard opened his mouth, closed it. He lowered the money a fraction. "Ma'am, I'm trying to." Rosa cut him off with a laugh, too sharp to be kind. "Trying to what?" "Buy him off." "You think you can fix your shame with paper?" Howard flushed. He looked at Jamal, then back at Rosa. "I owe him. Help me." Rosa took a step closer, close enough for Howard to smell the lavender soap. "Then say thank you and go. If you really want to help my boy, put your money in the school down the street that don't even have enough chairs. Or fix the lights on this block that go dark every week. But you ain't fixing him." Howard's lips parted, a protest on his tongue, but nothing came out. For the first time since the flat tire, he looked small, a suit with nowhere to stand. Jamal looked at his mother. A strength poured into him like morning sun through cracked glass. He took a slow breath. "She's right," he said quietly. "Go home, Mr. Ellison." Howard's eyes flicked between them, A man who could buy anything except this tiny street's respect. Slowly, he put his money back in his wallet, his fingers trembling. He opened the Mercedes door and climbed in, as the car pulled away. Rosa turned to Jamal. "You hungry?" He nodded. "Then come on," she said, her voice softer now. "Ain't nothing in this world for free, not even an apology." Jamal looked down the block where the Mercedes disappeared. Something deep inside him shifted again, the feeling that this wasn't over. Not by a long mile. 2 days later, Jamal found himself staring at his own face, in a place he'd never expected, the front page of the local Desert Sun. His name? Wasn't even printed right, Jamal Carter. Local teen hero. The photo was grainy but clear enough. Jamal kneeling by the Mercedes, his hands gripping the tire iron, sweat on his brow like a crown. The headline read, "CEO rescued by Good Samaritan." Teen Jamal stood in front of the newsstand on Main Street, the copy fluttering in the wind. Behind him, Mr. Lopez's barbershop radio blasted old Motown, mixing with the smell of cheap cologne and fresh haircuts, drifting through the open door. A few old men sat on the shop steps, laughing too loud. One of them, Big Darius, noticed Jamal, staring. "Hey, that you boy," he called out, waving the paper like a trophy. "Look at you, big shot now, huh?" Jamal didn't answer. He wanted to feel proud. Maybe he should have. But all he felt was the echo of Howard's voice on that dark highway. "Get your dirty hands off my car." Somehow that line never made it into the story. A small hand tugged at his sleeve. Little Andre, the boy from Tibet who always ran around barefoot, looked up at him with wide eyes. "You famous now, Jamal?" Jamal forced a smile. "Nah, just help someone change a tire." Andre grinned, toothy and crooked. "My mama say you're gonna be rich." Jamal crouched to his level. "You tell your mama I'm already rich. Gotcha, don't I?" Andre giggled, then ran off down the cracked sidewalk, arms spread like airplane wings. Jamal folded the paper under his arm and turned toward home. The apartment door was open when he got there. Found Rosa at the tiny kitchen table, her elbows resting on a stack of bills and a chipped mug of coffee gone cold. Across from her sat a woman Jamal had never seen before, white. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, a notebook perched on her knee. The woman looked up. Her smile was too quick to be real. "You must be Jamal. Sit down, sweetheart." "Dada." Rosa didn't look. Pleased, she sipped her cold coffee, eyes flicking between Jamal and the woman. Jamal stayed standing. "Who are you?" The woman's pen hovered over her notebook. "Jessica Rayner. Desert Sun. I wrote the piece this morning. Howard Ellison sent me. He thought you deserved the full story told." Jamal felt his stomach drop. "I didn't ask for that." Jessica gave a laugh like dry leaves rustling. "Oh, it's good. For you, opens doors. Scholarships, sponsors, people love this kind of thing. Local boy lifts up big man. It's poetic." Rose's fingers drummed the mug. "You didn't ask us before putting my boy's face out there." Jessica's smile faltered, just a flicker. "It's public interest, ma'am. He's a hero people should know. It's how the world changes." Jamal thought about that night, the hiss of the flat tire, Howard's spit-soaked insults, the $20 bill spinning away into the desert. He wondered which part of that made him a hero. Jessica leaned forward, pen tapping the page.
"Oh."
"Me, Jamal. What did you feel when you saw Mr. Ellison stuck there? Did you think he was going to help you back?" Rose's voice cut through the room like a blade. "My boy didn't help him to get something back. He helped him because that's what decent folks do." Jessica didn't write that part down. Outside, Jamal stood on the balcony, the paper tucked under his arm. He could hear Rose's voice drifting through the thin door, firm and calm as she showed Jessica out. Across the courtyard, a group of boys from school pointed at him, one of them calling out, "Hey, superstar, sign my shoe." Jamal managed to smile, but it felt like a crack on old concrete. He turned the page over in his hands. The photo stared. Back, a frozen moment, the tire iron, the dust, the glare of headlights. It didn't show the insult. It didn't show the 20. It didn't show the part where Howard looked him in the eye and realized he wasn't better than the boy with grease on his hands. Rosa stepped out beside him, resting her hand on his shoulder. She smelled like lavender and old soap and warmth. You did right, Jamal, she said softly. Don't let them twist it. He nodded but didn't say anything. Neighborhood felt smaller now, like everyone's eyes were on him, waiting to see if he'd become someone else. But Jamal knew who he was. He folded the paper one last time and tossed it in the kitchen trash. The phone rang twice before Rosa answered. Jamal watched her from the worn sofa, a half-eaten sandwich balanced on his knee. He couldn't hear the voice on the other end. But Rosa's eyebrows pinched together the moment she spoke. No, Mr. Ellison, she said flatly, her free hand resting on her hip. I don't see why dinner would fix what you did. Jamal sat up straighter. He knew it was him who else called at 6 in the evening, asking for favors they didn't deserve. Rosa listened for a moment, then scoffed. You think feeding a steak gonna wash your mouth clean? Be good with beans? Thank you. She was about to hang up when Jamal reached out and touched her elbow. She looked down at him, surprised to see the hint of curiosity in his eyes. Ma, let me hear him. Rosa narrowed her eyes but handed him the phone. Jamal pressed it to his ear. Howard's voice was rushed, too polite to sound real. Jamal, I wanted to say thank you. Again, I know I messed up. I want to make it right. Jamal could almost see him pacing around his mansion, probably clutching a glass of something expensive. You already said that? Jamal replied. The story's in the paper. You got what you wanted. That's not what I wanted, Howard insisted. I thought it would help you scholarships, connections. I want to talk, face to face. Rosa crossed her arms, mouth pressed tight. Jamal glanced at her. She shook her head once, hard. Come on. Howard's voice cracked a little. One dinner. My wife and kids want to meet you, properly. Jamal felt a pull deep in his chest. Not greed, not pride, just curiosity. He'd seen Howard's arrogance, wanted to see what the man looked like in his own castle. Fine, Jamal said. Rosa's eyes widened in protest, but he raised his hand. One dinner, that's it. The next night, a black town car pulled up outside their apartment. The driver stepped out, eyes flicking over the chipped steps, the broken porch light, the peeling paint on the door. Rosa walked Jamal out, her hand tight on his shoulder. You walk in there with your chin up, you hear me? She said under her breath. You don't owe that man nothing. Jamal nodded. He wore his only decent shirt, white ironed twice by Rosa, until the collar stood stiff. His old sneakers were clean but cracked at the sides, felt small next to the car, but when he looked at Rosa, he felt 10 feet tall. I'll be back. By 10, he promised. Or you call me, she said. I'll come drag you out myself. The driver opened the door, and Jamal slipped inside. Howard's mansion sat on a hill that looked down on half the city, all glittering lights and invisible borders. The driveway alone was longer than Jamal's entire street. He counted 3. Luxury cars under the carport before the front door even came into view. Howard greeted him at the massive oak door. Oh, wearing another suit. Tie loosened like he wanted to seem relaxed but didn't know how. He smiled too wide, too stiff. Jamal, come in, come in. Outside, the air smelled like lemon polish and roasted meat. Everything gleamed, marble floors, brass fixtures, a grand piano in the corner. A young girl peeked out from behind a staircase, then ducked away when Jamal looked at her. Howard led him to a dining room so big Jamal felt like he might get lost in it. A crystal chandelier hung low over a polished table already set with plates that looked too fancy to touch. Howard's wife, Margaret, smiled as she took Jamal's hand. Her eyes flicked to Howard, then back to Jamal. We're so grateful you helped my husband, Jamal. Truly. Jamal didn't answer right away. He took in the room the kids seated. At the far end, whispering to each other behind linen napkins, eyes darting at him like he was a ghost. Dinner was roast beef, asparagus, some fancy potatoes. Jamal ate slowly, answering questions when asked. How old are you? Where's your father dead? But Jamal didn't say it outright. What do you want to do someday? Howard talked too much. About business, about the stock market, about the story in the paper. He kept circling around the same point until he finally said it plain. I want to sponsor you, Jamal. Help you get into a better school. Give you a chance. Jamal set down his fork. Because I changed your tire. Howard swallowed. 'Cause you deserve it. But Jamal could see the truth in the man's eyes. It wasn't about the tire. It was about the photo. The headline. The stain on Howard's name, if people ever found out what he'd really said on that road. Jamal leaned back, napkin still on his lap. He glanced at the chandelier at the spotless table, at the way Howard's wife watched her husband like he might break. You think money's gonna fix it? Jamal asked softly. Howard's jaw tightened. He looked like he might argue, but he didn't watch. Jamal pushed his plate away. He knew then this dinner wasn't an apology. It was insurance. And Jamal. He wasn't for sale. Jamal knew the story would follow him to school. He just didn't think it would feel like a shadow. The morning after the dinner, he stepped through the rusted side gate of West Side High, sneakers scuffing the concrete, the squeak of old buses, and the shrill echo of the first bell ringing through cracked hallways. But this time, every eye seemed to follow him, not the usual glances that skipped off poor black kids like rain on tin, but long, sticky stares that weighed him down. He could hear it in the whispers. That's him, the millionaire kid. He's getting paid. Bet he gonna buy new Jordans tomorrow. At his locker, Jamal twisted the old dented combination dial. A girl he barely knew, Alyssa from chemistry, leaned against the next locker, chewing her gum slow. Hey, superstar, she drawled, popping the gum. How much he give you? Enough for a car? Jamal didn't look at her. He stuffed his math book into his backpack. Didn't give me nothing? She laughed. Yeah, right. Heard he gonna adopt you, make you rich? He slammed the locker shut a little harder than he meant to. Alyssa flinched back, eyes rolling as she drifted off down the hall, her laughter trailing behind her. Third period was worse. Mr. Harland, the old history teacher with yellow coffee teeth, stopped mid-lecture about the Civil War when Jamal slipped in late. Well, look who we got here, Harland said, his voice dripping with something that made Jamal's skin crawl. Our local celebrity. Maybe you can teach us how to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps, huh, Jamal? A few kids snickered. Jamal sank into his seat by the window, head down, fingers drumming the edge of his notebook. He felt every eye on him, waiting to see if he'd break. He didn't buy lunch. The buzz turned mean. Jamal sat alone under the dead oak by the back fence, peeling the crusts off his peanut butter sandwich. He could hear them behind him, Marcus and Darnell and the other boys from the basketball team. They'd never bothered with him before. He felt their steps closing in. Marcus kicked Jamal's shoe, knocking crumbs into the grass. Yo, hero, tell me something. How much did that rich man pay you to smile for the camera? Jamal didn't look up. Didn't. Darnell stepped closer, arms folded, gold chain flashing cheap in the sun. Bet you think you're better than us now, newsboy, TV boy, gonna forget where you're from? Jamal set his sandwich down on the plastic wrap. He looked at them, all tall shoulders, practiced swagger, fake gold, real anger. He didn't flinch. Y'all want to know the truth? Jamal asked. His voice was calm, quiet enough to make them lean in. He tried to pay me. I said no. Marcus barked a laugh. Yeah, okay. You dumb or something? Maybe, Jamal said, but I ain't cheap. The words slipped out like a dare. For a heartbeat, the boys went still, their bluff called by a kid in worn-out sneakers. Sitting on dry grass like he owned the ground under him, Darnell's lip curled. He shoved Jamal's shoulder, hard enough to knock him sideways. Jamal caught himself on his elbow, sandwich ruined in the dirt. You think you somebody? Darnell sneered. You ain't nothing but his charity. Don't forget that. Jamal stayed where he was, breathing slow, looking at the sky above the rusted fence. He didn't swing back, didn't raise his voice. He just spoke soft enough for them to hear. One day, you're gonna wish you said something different. Marcus stared at him, searching for something Jamal refused to give. Fear, shame, anything. But Jamal's eyes were steady, heavy with a quiet promise. Marcus muttered a curse, spat at the grass, and jerked his chin for Darnell to follow. They swaggered off, voices echoing through the yard, but Jamal stayed right where he was. He brushed dirt off his sleeve, picked up the smashed sandwich. He wasn't hungry anymore. When the final bell rang, Jamal didn't rush. He lingered by the chain-link fence, listening to the roar of buses, the squeal of old tires. Kids drifted past him like tumbleweeds, some nodding, most staring, a few whispering. He felt alone, but not lonely. Something about the dust on his sleeve reminded him of the road that night, the hiss of a flat tire, the weight of a $20 bill caught in the wind. Some debts couldn't be paid, some names couldn't be bought. Some boys like Jamal Carter, learned early how to stand in the dirt and dare the world to bury them. The knock came just after sundown. As before, Rosa was folding laundry on the couch. Jamal's shirts, his old jeans, a fresh set of socks she'd found on sale last week. She paused when she heard it, eyes flicking to Jamal where he sat at the kitchen table. Elbows deep in homework he'd stopped really seeing an hour ago. Jamal didn't need to ask who it was. The knock was too polite, too hesitant. He heard Rosa's soft sigh as she stood, wiping her hands on her housecoat. She didn't even bother to tie her scarf tighter. Let the visitor see her as she was. Howard stood in the doorway. Suit jacket draped over one arm, hair tousled as if he'd driven too fast with the windows down. The street behind him was dark, the hum of a fancy car engine idling at the curb. "Evening, Mrs. Carter," he said, voice low like he was afraid to wake the neighbors. Rosa didn't invite him in. She leaned her shoulder against the doorframe. "You lost again, Mr. Ellison?" Howard glanced past her shoulder, eyes searching for Jamal. He found him half hidden behind the curtain. Their eyes met for a heartbeat before Jamal ducked back, pressing himself flat against the hallway wall. He didn't want Howard's apology. He wanted to see who Howard really was. "I wanted to speak with you," Howard said carefully.
Howard.
Rosa didn't move aside, but she didn't slam the door either. She folded her arms. "Speak." Howard cleared his throat. He shifted his jacket from arm to arm, then slipped a white envelope from inside. He held it out like a truce. "No, I've handled this poorly. I embarrassed your son, embarrassed myself. I can't undo that, but maybe I can. Help, this is for Jamal's education, whatever he needs." Rosa didn't take the envelope. She didn't even glance at it. Her gaze pinned Howard like a nail to a wall. "How much?" Howard hesitated. "It's blank. You write the number." For a moment, the hallway felt too small for Jamal's heartbeat. He could hear the street outside, a dog barking, the faint bass of a passing car stereo. But all he really heard was that word blank. He peeked again, Howard's shoulders stiff, his polished shoes inside the dusty threshold. The envelope trembling just slightly in his hand, Rosa's lips parted in something that wasn't quite a smile. "You think my boy got a price tag?" Howard bristled. "No, ma'am, I think your boy deserves more than this place. More than this." His eyes swept over the cracked paint, the peeling linoleum just inside the door. Rosa's shoulders rose and fell with a silent laugh. "You think you're doing us a favor? Handing out charity to wash your dirty words off our doorstep?" Howard shifted, his smooth tone fraying at the edges. "It's not charity. It's opportunity." "He's bright." "He could be. He already is," Rosa cut in. Her voice was gentle, but sharp enough to draw blood. "He's my boy. He's decent. He's proud. He stood in that dirt and changed your tire when no one else would stop. He didn't do it for your pity, and he won't take your hush money now." Howard's jaw twitched. "I'm trying to fix this." Rosa's eyes softened, just a fraction. "Some things you don't fix with money, Mr. Ellison. You fix them by living with them. By letting M bruise you every morning when you look." In the mirror, Howard lowered the envelope. For the first time since the highway, he looked small in front of her. A grown man who could sign away millions, but couldn't buy back a moment of decency. Behind the hallway wall, Jamal pressed his palm to the peeling paint. His mother's voice wrapped around him like armor. She didn't shout, she didn't threaten, she just told the truth. Howard cleared his throat again, but no words came out this time. He tucked the envelope back inside his jacket, lips parting. Uselessly, like a man gasping for a lie that wouldn't come, Rosa stepped forward just enough to make him step back onto the crumbling stoop. "You want to help my son, Mr. Ellison?
Dad.
Let him walk his own road. Don't hang your shame around his neck." Howard swallowed. "Mrs. Carter, She closed the door. Soft, final inside. She found Jamal standing in the hall, fists balled tight at his sides. She reached out, touched his cheek, her thumb brushing away sweat or maybe tears. He didn't know which. "You see?" she murmured. "They can have all the money in the world, baby. But they still can't buy what we got." Jamal nodded, words stuck in his throat. He looked past her at the door, half expecting it to open again. But Howard Ellison was gone, walking back to his world where dignity had a price and apologies came in envelopes. Jamal knew then. His road wasn't paved in gold. It was dirt and cracked asphalt, sweat and spit, and all the names they'd call him. But it was his, and no man would ever own it. The desert dusk was slipping into night when Jamal heard the familiar rattle of tools behind the old Carter & Sons garage. He'd been stacking worn-out tires behind the shed, the smell of rubber and motor oil clinging to his shirt. Mr. Carter, Jamal's uncle, wide-shouldered and soft-spoken, had given him work since he could lift a wrench. Tonight was no different. Except tonight, Jamal wasn't the only one under the flickering work light. Through the open bay door, Jamal froze when he saw him. Howard Ellison, kneeling beside an old pickup with the hood popped open, grease on his palms, tie stuffed in his back pocket like a discarded ribbon. Uncle Carter leaned on the wall nearby, a half-finished cigarette smoldering between his fingers. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look impressed either. Howard wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his wrist. His crisp white shirt spotted black around the cuffs. His fancy watch was gone. Jamal noticed that first. It's in its place, a simple rubber band circled. His wrist, snapping softly each time. Howard wiped his hands. Jamal stepped closer, the gravel crunching under his worn sneakers. Carter's eyes flicked to his nephew, then back to Howard. He blew out a slow stream of smoke that drifted between them like a thin wall. "You tell him yet?" Carter asked. Howard didn't look up. He tugged at a stubborn bolt, knuckles scraping. "Against the rusty metal?" "No," he muttered. "Not yet." Jamal folded his arms. "Tell me what?" Howard glanced up then, sweat beading at his temples, hair stuck to his forehead. He looked smaller under the harsh work light, more fragile than the man who'd stood in Rosa's doorway with an envelope, he thought, could buy back his pride. "I wanted to see what it was like," Howard said. His voice was hoarse, tired, honest in a way that made Jamal's chest tighten. "To get my hands dirty again. My father was a mechanic, before the suits, before the meetings." He pushed the wrench into place, the metal squeal echoing off the cinder block walls. "I forgot what work feels like," he continued. "Real work. The kind you can't pay someone else to finish for you." Jamal stayed silent. He looked at his uncle, but Carter just shrugged, flicking ash to the ground. Howard sat back on his heels, wiping grease on an old rag. His eyes found Jamal's, not demanding, not pleading, just searching for something solid between them. "I didn't come here to ask for forgiveness," Howard said, "or to fix what I broke. I know I can't. I just needed to remember what a man is when nobody claps for him." The silence buzzed under the dim bulb. Jamal felt the heaviness of it, the truth that Howard Ellison, who owned half the block downtown, walked into this tiny shop to sweat under a busted pickup because shame had followed him like a shadow he couldn't outrun. Carter stubbed out his cigarette, grunted. "Boy, grab that toolbox," he told Jamal. "If this man's going to remember how to fix something, he better do it right." Jamal moved without a word, slid the box over, metal tools clinking inside, dropped it at Howard's feet. For a moment, their hands brushed, Howard's palm rough with new blisters. "You ever change oil before?" Jamal asked, his tone flat but not cruel. Howard huffed a soft laugh. "When I was 19, thought I was going to be a mechanic like my dad. Then college happened. Suits happened. Money happened," Jamal said, no bitterness in it, just fact. Howard didn't deny it. He grabbed the oil filter like he knew what he was doing, but Jamal saw the hesitation, the small, humble confusion of a man used to being obeyed, not taught. So Jamal knelt beside him, showed him how to line up the wrench, or to brace his hand so it wouldn't slip, how to twist the cap slow, feel the old oil drain like regret into the battered tin pan below. They didn't talk much. Carter stood back, arms folded, a small nod of approval hidden behind his tired eyes. When the job was done, Howard wiped his hands, grease smeared on his sleeve like an accidental confession. He looked at Jamal, voice soft under the hum of night. Insects, outside the open door. I can't say sorry enough, Howard said. Jamal studied him, the sweat, the dirt under his nails, the tremor in his voice that no press release could polish away. He gave a small shrug, wiping his own hands. On a rag. You don't have to say it, Jamal replied. Just be it. The three of them stood under the single flickering bulb, two men born on opposite sides of a cracked road, and a boy learning that sometimes an apology isn't words at all. Sometimes it's grease on your skin, and silence between two men who understand exactly how heavy the truth can be. The flyer went up Monday morning, taped to every hallway, door, and bathroom mirror at Westside High. Special assembly this Friday featuring local business leader Howard, lesson, below his name. In smaller letters, with special guest, Jamal Carter. By lunch, everyone knew. By the final bell, Jamal felt the weight of 200 curious eyes pressing him flat against his locker. He pulled the flyer down, crumpled it into his pocket, and tried not to think about it all night. Friday came like the first heat wave of summer, air heavy, halls buzzing with rumors. Jamal stood outside the double doors of the school auditorium, adjusting the stiff collar Rosa had ironed 3 times that morning. His stomach turned every time he replayed what the principal had told him. Stand next to Mr. Ellison. Smile. Let him talk about what you did. Nod if you agree. It'll be good for everyone. Good for who? Jamal wondered. Inside, the auditorium smelled like old varnish and too many bodies packed into cheap folding chairs. The lights overhead hummed. A low chatter rose and fell as students shifted in their seats. Teachers patrolled the aisles. The principal fiddled with the microphone. Howard stood at the side of the stage, suit perfect, tie perfectly knotted hair, slicked back like the guilt never happened. But when he saw Jamal, he offered a small nod, one that wasn't for show. Jamal gave him nothing back. Not yet. Ready? Howard asked when Jamal stepped up beside him backstage. Jamal shrugged. You? Howard's smile was tight. I don't think anyone's ever really ready. They waited as the principal tapped. The mic cleared his throat and launched into a winding speech about ambition and opportunity and turning small moments into stepping stones. His words floated over the restless students, most of them more interested in the basketball game after school than this show. Then Howard stepped up to the mic, calm as a man selling a dream. He started like they always do, the big name, the big titles, the polished story of humble beginnings. How his father worked 2 jobs. How he learned about hard work changing spark plugs and oil filters. How he built his empire from the ground up. The teachers nodded. Few students even clapped. Then Howard pointed a hand at Jamal, who stood just behind him, shoulders stiff. Eyes locked on the exit sign. And then there's this young man here, Howard said, voice ringing across the auditorium. A boy who reminded me that we all need help sometimes. That no matter how far you get, you're never too good to accept a hand or to learn humility. Some students clapped. A few hooted Jamal's name. But it felt wrong in his chest, like they were clapping for a story. That wasn't real. Howard gestured for Jamal to step forward. A teacher handed him a second microphone, cold, heavy in his palm. The principal's smile was plastic at the edge of the stage. Howard leaned close, his whisper to soft for the crowd. Just thank them. Keep it short. Jamal stared at the mic, and at the sea of faces. Marcus and Darnell slouched in the back row, Alyssa popping gum in the second row. Teachers lined up like a silent fence. He looked at Howard. The polished mask, the practiced posture. And he thought of his mother standing in their doorway, telling a millionaire that some things couldn't be bought. Jamal brought the mic to his lips. His heart pounded so loud he thought the speakers. I pick it up. My name's Jamal Carter, he said, voice steady but small at first. Some of y'all know me. Some of y'all think you do. The room shifted, chairs creaked, whispers hushed. I didn't change no man's life, Jamal said, eyes locked on Howard now. I changed his tire. That's it. He was stuck. I helped him because that's what my mama taught me. You'll help people when they need it, even if they don't deserve it. A ripple of laughter, awkward and sharp, rolled through the back rows. The principal's smile slipped. Jamal's voice rose, strong enough to carry to the far wall. This ain't about me being a hero, or him being a saint. It's about all of us. You see someone stuck? Help 'em. You see someone hungry? Feed. You see someone trying to buy your respect with a blank check? Tear it up. He paused, breathing hard, eyes flicking to Howard, who looked less like a giant now and more like a man caught standing too close to the truth. I ain't. Better than nobody here, Jamal finished, words like stone in his mouth. But I ain't for sale either. He set the mic down on the edge of the stage, not dropped, just placed, soft and final. He turned, met Howard's stunned gaze, and nodded once, the only respect he'd ever owe him. Then Jamal stepped. Down from the stage, down the aisle, past the frozen teachers and the kids who stared at him like he was a new language they'd never heard before. Outside, the desert sun hit him square in the face, hot, blinding, real. Jamal Carter, no script, no suit, and nobody's damn hero but his own. The sun was already sinking low when Jamal pushed open the heavy double doors and stepped out of West Side High. The desert air hit him, warm and dry, thick with the smell of hot asphalt, and 1,000 old stories burned into the streets. For a second, the silence pressed against his ears. He could still hear the echo of his voice bouncing off the auditorium walls. The way some kids clapped, some whispered, and some just stared at him like they'd seen something they weren't ready for. He tightened his backpack strap over one shoulder and started walking away from the bus stop, away from the line of kids still pointing at him through the glass windows. He wanted the walk. He needed the road under his shoes, cracked sidewalks, weeds pushing through the splits, the smell of fried chicken drifting from Ms. Boyd's kitchen 3 blocks down. Every step felt like he was peeling off the last bit of stage lights. And fake smiles? Halfway down Maple, old Mr. Jenkins sat on his porch swing, radio humming low next to him. He raised 2 fingers in a lazy salute when Jamal passed. Preacher boy now, huh? Jenkins croaked, voice rough with too many cigarettes. I heard about that speech. Made the whole block proud. Jamal gave him a shy grin. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. A little further down, Keisha and her twin brother Khalil were drawing with sidewalk chalk, their palms stained pink and yellow and blue. Khalil looked up and shouted, "Hey, Jamal, say something for the TV again." Keisha smacked her brother's arm with her chalk stick. Leave him alone. He's famous now. Jamal crouched down to their level, elbows resting on his knees. Nah, he said, voice soft. Ain't nobody famous, just me. Keisha handed him a piece of chalk purple worn to a nub. Write your name. So Jamal did Jamal in crooked letters across the concrete next to their sun and stars. The twins clapped like it was magic. For the first time that day, Jamal laughed. Not the polite laugh he'd learned for strangers, but the laugh that shook his ribs loose and left him. It's lighter than he'd felt in weeks. By the time he turned the corner onto his block, the streetlights were flickering awake. The sunset hit the row of apartments in a wash of soft gold. Cracked bricks looked warm. The old chain-link fences shone like silver thread at the foot of the steps. Rosa waited, arms crossed, a dish towel draped over her shoulder. She'd been watching. Jamal knew it the moment he saw her. She always did. She didn't ask about the speech, didn't ask what he said or if the principal was mad. She just looked at him the way she used to when he'd come home scraped up from the playground, measuring him up and deciding what needed fixing and what didn't. You hungry? She asked, voice gentle. Jamal shrugged, one side of his mouth lifting. Little bit. She stepped aside, nodding toward the door. I kept your plate warm. Fried chicken, cornbread, no microphones. Promise. He laughed again, ducking his head as he climbed the steps. But before he reached the door, Rosa caught his sleeve. Nice. She turned him around, her palm brushing the side of his face, thumb tracing the worry line between his brows. Proud of you, she said. Simple. Final. Jamal swallowed the knot in his throat. I didn't embarrass you? She barked a short laugh, the one that made her eyes shine. Embarrass me? Baby, you lifted us up? Can't nobody buy what you did in there. He looked past her shoulder at the flickering hallway light. Inside their apartment, at the threadbare couch, at the smell of cornbread sneaking through the screen door. It wasn't much, but it was his, the only stage he'd ever really need. He hugged her fast and hard. She patted his back twice the way she always did, before pulling away. Now get inside, she said, voice mock stern. Food's getting cold. Speeches feed you? Boy, please? Inside, Jamal dropped his backpack by the door, slipped into his chair at the rickety kitchen table, where the steam from his plate curled around him like a blessing. Out the window, the city buzzed. The same city that barely noticed him before a flat tire and $1 million lie. But here, in this kitchen, under this roof, Jamal Carter was already rich, not in dollars, in something thicker than gold, and sharper than shame. And no man alive could sign that away. It didn't take long for the headlines to move on by winter. The papers found new heroes and new villains. Howard Ellison's face still showed up sometimes, a quote about diversity initiatives. A photo at some charity gala, a rumor about a boardroom shuffle, but Jamal Carter's name faded back into the background where the world thought it belonged. Only Jamal didn't fade with it. By spring, he was taller, or maybe he just carried himself different. He still swept the cracked steps for Mrs. Ramirez next door, still helped his uncle at the auto shop after school, still had the same scuffed shoes Rosa scrubbed clean every Sunday. But something had shifted. Teachers who used to overlook him now paused at his desk, asked for his thoughts on things bigger than book reports. Younger kids nodded at him in the hallway like they'd seen him swing a hammer in a fight he didn't even start. One Tuesday afternoon, Jamal found a letter tucked in his locker. No name on the envelope, just thank you. Inside was a single sentence written in blocky pencil. You made me think I could stand up to. He folded it small and kept it in his back pocket. It's heavier than any blank check. Sometimes Howard still called. Not often, just enough. Once to ask if Jamal wanted to visit his office downtown, see what your future might look like. Jamal always answered polite, always said no. Howard came by the auto shop twice that year. He didn't wear his suit. He didn't bring an envelope. He just stood beside Jamal under the hood of old cars, trying to remember how bolts twist and engines hum. They didn't talk much. Jamal liked it that way. Some truths sat better in grease and sweat than in carefully practiced apologies. On the first anniversary of the flat tire, Jamal walked the same road. Rosa fussed when he said he'd be late. It's dark out there, she warned. He just kissed her cheek and said he'd be fine. The desert night was colder than he remembered. The blacktop stretched empty under the yellow streetlights that flickered like sleepy stars. He found the exact spot, the patch of shoulder where Howard's shiny car had sat lopsided. Hazard lights blinking, Jamal kicked at a pebble, watched it skitter into the brush. He stood there a long while, letting the chill creep through his jacket. Feeling how small the road made him and how wide the world really was, he thought about how easy it would have been to just keep walking that night. Pretend he hadn't seen the car, pretend he didn't hear the hiss of the tire going flat. He wondered if Howard ever thought the same. Sometimes Jamal hated that moment. Other times he loved it. Mostly he just accepted it for what it was, a small thing that grew bigger than either of them ever meant it to. When he was ready, Jamal turned back toward home. His footsteps crunched on the gravel shoulder, the moon hanging low over the street like an old friend in his head. He heard Rosa's voice. Some things you don't fix with money. He heard his own voice, too, echoing back from that stage. I ain't. For sale, at the end of the road, the lights of their apartment glowed warm against the dark. Jamal picked up his pace, hands buried in his pockets, heart steady. Every step felt like a promise he didn't have to say out loud. No blank check. No cheap headlines. Just a boy with dirt on his shoes and something nobody could buy off him. His named his road, his choice to keep walking it, mile after mile. Back home, Rosa waited by the window, curtain pulled just enough to see him coming. She'd pretend she hadn't been waiting. He'd pretend he hadn't noticed. When Jamal stepped inside, she was already turning down the stove. The TV hummed soft in the living room, the smell of leftover cornbread lingering in the warm air. "You hungry?" she asked. Jamal dropped his backpack by the door, a smile ghosting across his lips. Always, he sat at the table, same rickety chair, same chipped plates. Rosa pressed a fork into his hand, squeezed his shoulder once before she sat down too. Outside, the desert night went on, a long, cracked highway cutting through darkness. Jamal knew there'd be more miles to walk, more tires to change, more names to remember, and more truths to speak. And when the next man tried to buy him, he'd remember this. Some roads you don't sell, some boys you don't own, some names, if you're lucky, stay yours forever.